There are perfectly appropriate quid pro quos, and there are inappropriate quid pro quos.
Anytime that anyone talks to the president, he has been very clear. There is no linkage. There is no quid pro quo.
What I can tell you about the Trump policy toward the Ukraine, it was incoherent. It depends on who you talk to. They seem to be incapable of forming a quid pro quo.
Just some of the Republican defense of the president this week. So let's bring in Congressman Mac Thornberry, the top Republican on the House Armed Services Committee. And Congressman Thornberry, you just heard Congresswoman Speer lay out the Democratic strategy for these public hearings. Republicans have criticized the process of this inquiry up to now. What's the Republican strategy to combat the substance of these allegations?
Well, you started out, Martha, by saying, how did we get here? And let me add a couple of things to that, because I think it is important to remember. Shortly after President Trump was inaugurated, there were Democrats who were calling for him to be impeached because they were so surprised at the results of the last election. We literally had 2.5 years of investigations, subpoenas, the Mueller report, all of that. And then all of a sudden in September, the whistleblower comes forward and says, oh, but there's this conversation that I worried about. All of that 2.5 years of investigation gets swept aside, and now the Democrats put all of their eggs in this one basket. The problem is they started this basket not with the Nixon and Clinton precedents as far as making sure there was appropriate transparency and due process. They have made it one-sided from the beginning, very partisan. So I think whatever happens now, there will be a taint to this one-sided partisan approach to impeachment that is different than has been used before. And so I think there will be intense skepticism about whatever they come up with. Again, they don't
Congressman,
let the lawyer there, they don't let the witnesses come. It has been one-sided from the beginning.
Congressman, you're again talking about the process. I ask you about substance. How do you fend against this substance?
Well, as you know, maybe you know, Martha, I believe that it is inappropriate for a president to ask a foreign leader to investigate a political rival. Now, it leads to a question. If there's a political rival with a family member who's involved in questionable activity, what do? Just let them alone. But set that aside. I believe it was inappropriate. I do not believe it was impeachable. And process, you know, y'all always want to say substance, not process. There's a reason we let murderers and robbers and rapists go free when their due process rights have been violated. We believe the integrity of the system, the integrity of the Constitution, the integrity of the processes under our legal system is more important than the outcome of one particular case. So I don't think you can sweep process under the rug because it is part of an impeachment decision which has a constitutional requirement, bribery, treason, high crimes and misdemeanors, but also a political element about whether it's good for the country to pursue it under these circumstances.
Why is what you have seen not a clear abuse of power? I know you've said it's inappropriate, his remarks, but not impeachable. Why is what you've seen thus far and the transcript of that phone call, which we discussed, not a clear abuse of power or bribery, as the Constitution lays out?
Yeah, you're right. The Constitution is very specific: bribery, treason, high crimes and misdemeanors, which basically means felonies. So that's what you have to prove as a threshold question. The second question is, under the circumstances, do you believe that it's good for the country to proceed with impeachment? I would suggest a couple of circumstances are relevant here. Number one is there's not really anything that the president said in that phone call that's different than he says in public all the time. So is there some sort of abuse of power that rises to that threshold that is different than the American people have been hearing for 3 years? I don't hear that. But secondly, we do have an election coming up. So doing it at this time And make no mistake, the Democrats are rushing this through by Christmas so they don't interfere with their candidates being in Iowa, New Hampshire, and so forth next year. Let the put everything they've got out there, fine.
Let me ask you quickly, sir.
People decide this in less than a year.
Let me ask you quickly, do you believe the whistleblower should testify, and do you believe Hunter Biden should testify?
I have not been in the room for all, like most members of Congress, I have not been in the room for all of these hearings and secret proceedings. So I don't really know who the proper witnesses ought to be. I mean, I think what Jackie Spears said is right. The whistleblower basically has third-hand information, but
so not necessary.
I don't know to what extent. I don't know to what extent he or she may have information that relates to other people's information. So I can't make that call. I think it's got to be the people in the room who make the call. But again, there has to be a fair way to arbitrate, to decide who the witnesses are. We've had none of that so far.
Okay, thanks very much for joining us this morning, Congressman Thornberry.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.